You're listening to WRUU-LP, Savannah, Georgia, 107.5 FM, WRUU.org. We are Savannah Soundings, community radio with global soul.
Check, check, 1, 2. Hope you like a little country, some rock and roll and blues, 'cause we sure love playing for good people like you. Let me know if you can hear me. Check, check, 1, 2.
Welcome to Music Local and Sustainable, the radio show that features discussions with and the music of local musicians. I am your host, Dave Lake. Tonight, we have in the studio Jared Hall. Now, everybody knows Jared Hall as the keyboardist and accordion player for Velvet Caravan. But he also plays honky-tonk, and he is classically trained. Welcome, Jared Hall.
Hey, how's it going?
What you been doing lately?
Oh, that's a big question. Lots of things. I've been called the man of many hats most of my life. So what I've been doing lately is a lot of things. Or a little bit of a lot of things, I guess you might say. No, things are going great. I've got my beautiful family. I've got my wife, Emily, and daughter, June, and a new son, little Graham. Keeps me busy at home. Musically, been doing a lot of great things. Velvet Caravan, we're pretty much on fire right now. We've got our new booking agency that's really trying to keep us super busy and get us traveling all across the globe. Also working with the Savannah Children's Choir here in town, getting ready to do a big performance. Director of music at Trinity United Methodist Church in town. We're not only doing the choir and Sunday morning music, but putting on a lot of music during the week and a concert series and such. A little bit of a lot of things, so to speak.
And when the Savannah Music Festival was in town, you were very busy with them as well.
Oh, absolutely. We did about 13 shows at the church in the sanctuary for their chamber music series, including one which was an entire full day of a gentleman who came to play all of the Beethoven sonatas from 10 a.m. to about 11 p.m. And that was quite a marathon that day. So
Stephen Goodyear. I don't know anybody who stayed for the whole thing. Probably some people did. I know people had tickets for the whole thing.
I was definitely there the whole time.
I keep seeing people who I knew would be going to that at other things around town during the 3-arc cycle and saw people at different places.
Absolutely.
Town.
It was quite a marathon, I tell you. It's kind of like going to the Wagner Festival for the ring cycle.
Although that lasts weeks.
Absolutely, yes.
Tell us a little bit about some of the new tunes that maybe Velvet Caravan is doing.
Well, we've been doing a lot of writing and rehearsing, and we have a couple new guitar players we're working with that are bringing some songs to the table. Really trying to think about our next album. The last album we did was a real honest interpretation of the way we sound live if you hired us to play at your theater or venue. We recorded it live in the Lucas Theater, and with no tracking, it just basically did several takes of each tune and took the best one. So it was a very straightforward recording, but for our next album, we're really looking to dive into a whole new world. We're bringing on a producer, we're bringing on in some elements of some brass and some orchestral things, and looking to work with even some musicians and artists that don't really fall into our genre, just ways to explore different avenues in our recording.
What is a typical song off that first album? If you had to pick one song that reflects the Velvet Caravan, which one would you probably pick?
Oh boy, well that's a really hard question because I think they all do. And they all represent, in our heads, different moments when we were doing those songs, starting out at B. Matthews here in town, in Savannah. From my perspective coming into the band, I came in from having played a lot of honky-tonk music, playing with rock and roll, blues bands, a lot of country music, singer-songwriter, Americana, so to speak. So when I arrived, what my element was of the band was a lot of this honky-tonk piano and some organ and some accordion. So what I love, the way we treat a song like After You've Gone, where it kind of starts off with some of that ragtime style stride piano and then rolls into our gypsy, Django version of that song, which is amped up. We had Sasha on guitar who helped us pretty much amp up every tempo to twice the speed. So it's definitely on fire.
And that was, as you said, really a live album.
Yeah, it's honestly a live album without the live audience, but it was done pretty much live on stage at the Lucas, recorded straightforward, yeah. Straightforward as you would have heard us if you saw us live.
Mm-hmm. And the next one is going to be with much higher production values.
Absolutely. We're looking to be real thoughtful in our composition. We've done several shows with orchestras now. We've done the Savannah Philharmonic, the Hilton Head Symphony Orchestra. We've worked with the Jackson Symphony, the Beaufort Symphony, and wanting to do a lot more orchestral shows, but also we lean a little bit towards the jazz clubs, and we lean towards some of the concert stages, and we're trying to look how to intertwine some of the orchestral stuff with some of the Latin jazz, with some of the honky-tonk elements that we can fuse into a really nice recording. Sometimes we hate to do comparisons, but somebody recently said, "Oh, you remind me a little bit of Pink Martini," or something like that, where there's a lot of different elements going on. And we hope with our new recording that we're striving for it to be at a level which would be a great contender for a Grammy nomination or something, or to get some national, international attention that way.
What additional pressures are now on you with the band sort of starting to take off? Because you guys travel at least once a month on some sort of trip, and sometimes more often than that.
Yeah, so we've got a lot of touring coming up next year, actually. It's a new dynamic. We used to play almost every night around Savannah. Now we're changing that up and trying to bring our music to the rest of the country and the world, where we have some other cool things happening internationally down the road as well. There's a lot of new problems that happen because of that. We're actually getting paid really well for our shows, but now we have to kind of talk about how we're going to get there. Are we driving? Are we flying? And how do we get our instruments to point A to point B? How do we pay for that? Or do we need to get a band tour bus or vehicle or van and trailer and all of those things? So there's a lot of logistical things that we have to work out. And when we first started, we just were a bunch of guys getting together in a restaurant. And then we figured we had to become a real band and put a real name and a real website. And now we have a real business. So it's a big step up for us. And right now, we have our booking agency with Velvet Caravan is Cossin Talent. And he's got some great stuff happening for us next year, the next couple of years, actually. And we're even in talks right now with an international agency that's going to bring us on board and do a lot of things overseas, too, and in the right way. And both of those kind of, what the cool thing is not only are we playing music for a concert stage, but we're doing a lot of educational things, which is very important to all of us.
What type of educational things?
For now, we do a couple of different things, and I think it might evolve into several different kinds of things, but we'll go into the schools, and we'll do a concert, and we'll do some master classes with the kids.
This is like high schools?
Middle schools and high schools, and elementary, actually. We can do something for the younger ages. We have a show called Boris and Sasha that is specifically written for the elementary age children. Kind of follows the same programming as Peter and the Wolf, where there's a story with some musical examples that you follow throughout the story. But the cool thing is we have a slideshow, we have a presentation, we have a lot of one-on-one workshop type of masterclass after that Jesse can go work with the band department and their percussionists, and Ricardo can go work with the orchestra and the strings. I can work with some of the piano kids. A lot of what we work on, because all of us really come from different backgrounds, but we can understand the classical background of training and reading music, but we also work with the children on improvisation and playing how you feel and rolling with your ideas and letting yourself be expressed through your music.
Well, you have a very interesting background. What I thought might be interesting, since you have the keyboard right here in the studio, would maybe be to talk about your background, but then to play something that reflects that aspect, because you've had such a varied background in terms of coming from classical training, but going through the Austin music scene, and now here, and have been honky tonk and rock and roll, and
sure, of course,
classical, yeah. And now really sort of associated with jazz and gypsy jazz. I thought maybe we could talk about each phase of your life there and maybe play something that would reflect that.
I'll see what I can do. So growing up, you hear this from a lot of musicians, but it's true, and it was very much true in my life. Couldn't have done this without the support of my parents, but also it was the inspiration through church music. It was basically a Methodist church in my hometown that said, hey, I know you play, and our organist has become not able to play. I think she was getting blind and is too old to play. And I was in high school at the time, and they said, would you mind coming in and playing the organ? Do you think you could handle that? And it really freaked me out for a second, and then the next second I thought, of course I can do this. It was a good challenge for me. But in turn, that allowed me to kind of have some freedom to program some music, to learn a new instrument, to learn the organ, which is kind of how I fell in love with the organ, and which a long, crazy path brought me back to the Hammond B3 and such. But being in the church music, and my grandmother played boogie-woogie piano, I was always at a constant battle between classically trained piano playing and playing what I really wanted to play. So, for example, I would always try to pick pieces to play classically that I enjoyed. Something that I didn't necessarily enjoy would be like a Scarlatti piece, like something like that. Just very Bach or Domenico Scarlatti. A lot of that kind of fugue and variations kind of thing didn't really appeal to me, but I loved like the impressionist kind of stuff, so I could do some Debussy. And you kind of get into that whole pattern, which I love. Loved that kind of impressionist kind of stuff. So I actually really worked on that and practiced it. But I went to college, studied piano and voice. I was singing opera, and what I secretly was doing in my spare time, I realized, was going out to the practice room and doing a little bit of this. And then I'd get caught by my professor, and then I'd get in trouble because I wasn't practicing on the other stuff. So it was a weird juxtaposition, but I realized later on that there's a nice marriage between the two, and you get some good skills because of that. But eventually I was drawn to Austin, Texas because of people like Marcia Ball, who lived down there. Pinetop Perkins, who used to play with Muddy Waters, was a big piano inspiration of mine, a blues player. And I'd gotten wind that he was down there. And then I was also playing with an artist named Colin Gilmore, a great songwriter and a good friend of mine. Also the son of Jimmy Dale Gilmore, who's in the group The Flatlanders with Joe Ely and Butch Hancock. And I just kind of started falling in love with all that Texas music. And I knew that a lot of the roots of boogie-woogie kind of came out of the New Orleans and into the Texas area. And so eventually ended up down in Austin, Texas, and doing a lot of playing down there, and I could really get into a lot of that kind of boogie-woogie, honky-tonk, but also completely influenced by folks like Chuck Leavell, and found it pretty amazing when I moved here to Savannah that he was in the area, too.
Tonight, we have in the studio Jared Hall. Your hometown is actually in Iowa.
Yeah, grew up in a small town named Atlantic, Iowa. Funny, they flipped a coin when they started the town. They think that they're between the two coasts. So we're going to be either Atlantic or Pacific, and Atlantic is what won. And now right down the street from me where I live is a great restaurant called The Atlantic. And so I bring all my family when they come to visit over to The Atlantic.
Fortunately for us, because I'm afraid that if you grew up in Pacific, you might have wound up in California and not here.
You never know, yes.
You went to school in Iowa as well.
Simpson College. It was a Methodist school, actually. The music department was more of conservatory style, and they had a great opera program, great music program, and it fed into the Des Moines Metro Opera, which is an amazing regional opera company that has a great summer program. And so I grew up right there, going to college and being around that really high-class music, and very highly professional musicians around me. So you had to step up and get the job done, so to speak. But yeah, did that and taught music for a few years and then decided I wanted to go full-time into playing.
And you're married to an opera singer.
Yes, believe it or not. So my wife Emily and I were great friends in college, and we went our separate ways for a while. She went out, got some advanced degrees, and went off to New York and such. And I was back in Des Moines, Iowa, playing dueling pianos of all things. Dueling with another guy, doing all these shows, playing with some Americana groups too, playing with an alternative country group named Randy Burke and the Prisoners. So I was a prisoner, so to speak.
I wish you the world and then some. I love you more than I knew a man could love someone. I'll give you all I have, all I can. Break your fall and hold your hand. Ain't nothing in this world I love more than you. You're the bounce in my step. You're the gleam in my eye. When I got nothing left, you're the reason I still try. You're the wind in my sail, the wheels on my train. You're the reason I live. You're the blood in my veins. You're gonna take this old world by storm. With a fearless smile and a gentle roar, took my heart the day you were born. And I'll always be around, keep an eye when you stumble, yeah, when you cry. You won't ever have to look too far for me. You're the bounce in my step. You're the gleam in my eye. When I got nothing left, you're the reason I still try. You're the wind in my sail, the wheels on my train. You're the reason I live. You're the blood in my veins.
It was great. But she came back to visit after living in New York for a while and said, "Oh my goodness, how are you making it work in a small city like this? How are you able to be a full-time musician?" I'd already cut the cord from teaching in the public schools, and it was kind of a scary thing for me, but I'd started to find a lot of success in that. And you just have to build your own path. You have to find your own opportunities and become your own entrepreneur, so to speak. And she was really impressed with that and ended up moving back, and we started dating. So longtime friends, and then became married not too long after that. And here we are. We actually moved here to Savannah because of her job. We moved to Austin together and did the music thing for a while, and then she finished her degree, wanted to be a professor at a college, university. Armstrong State University gave her the job offer, and so we came over here because it's such a beautiful place to be, Savannah.
Before you actually even moved down to Austin, you were involved with Mr. Gilmore.
You never know who you meet on the road and who you meet through other people, but I was playing with a group, Randy Burke and the Prisoners. We were doing a lot of shows with the Bastard Sons of Johnny Cash, and I ended up actually doing some tours with the Bastard Sons of Johnny Cash too. But the band that was backing up the Bastards, a couple guys from Chicago, ended up working with Colin as well. So they were his kind of Midwest band. So whenever he got north of Texas, he'd call these guys up, and they were twin brothers actually. One guy, Jason Bennett, plays guitar, and then Tim Bennett plays drums. Great guys, just amazing people, amazing human beings. And so I got to know them, and they said, hey, I've got this guy Colin we're working with too. He needs a keyboard player. So pretty soon I started, he'd come up and I'd kind of do a little tour with them and became his Midwest keyboardist, so to speak. And so it was I was keeping pretty darn busy. It was really nice. I kept getting pulled down to Texas after that. A lot of those artists, and a good friend of mine, Mark Stewart, who's with the Bastard Sons of Johnny Cash, he's the founder, songwriter, singer. He was in San Diego at the time and then had moved down to Austin, Texas as well. So it was a lot of people in my life. It was becoming a nice beacon. And sure enough, you got down there and there was so much music happening, almost too much. It's just everywhere you went, you tripped over a musician pretty much. But it was a nice relief from the Midwest where I came from, and great people up there, but I was having a hard time getting enough opportunities to play in the city that I lived. So it was a nice change, and I definitely missed the Midwest and I missed Texas, but I found Savannah to be super fruitful in the music scene here.
So how long were you in Austin?
Off and on for a while, but Emily and I officially lived there just over a year. And then all of a sudden the job bit for her. And we had some great things going on. She was teaching all over the city. I'm teaching voice, and I was playing with a full-time band with a salary, and then two other bands on the side, and doing a lot of recording studio session work. And the big thought was one of us needs something pretty stable, so with insurance maybe. So then, the job bit, and it was really hard to leave. And in fact, when we moved here to Savannah, I spent the first year pretty much flying back to play gigs in Austin, and still a couple up in Des Moines. That's the one nice thing about music. You can travel and play with a lot of people. And in fact, we're dealing with that with Velvet Caravan right now. Our guitarist and one of our founders of the band, Sasha, moved up into the Nashville area for his job as a psychiatrist, and couldn't really continue to work with us, but we've got a guy out of New York City and a guy out of San Francisco Bay Area, Oakland, that we're using both of them in different scenarios, and both of them will be on the new album as well. We're going to record with them.
You're listening to WRUULP, Savannah, Georgia, 107.5 FM, WRUU.org. We are Savannah Soundings, community radio with global soul.
If you enjoy our programming on WRUULP, please support the station with a donation. As an individual, you can give any amount, become a basic station member, or become a serious fan of the station. To check out membership rates and to donate to the station, go to www.wruu.org/individual and select to donate monthly or subscribe to an annual membership. Again, to donate to the station, go to www.wruu.org/individual and select to donate monthly or subscribe to an annual membership. Thank you for listening to and supporting WRUULP.
The Savannah Bicycle Campaign has published a free cycling guide and map. The Bike SAV map contains downtown and county-wide maps, tips for safe cycling, and overview of state and local laws relevant to bicycling. The guides are available at local bike stores and other businesses, at City Hall, and online at bicyclecampaign.org/routes. Print copies available by emailing info@bicyclecampaign.org. You're listening to music local and sustainable, and I'm your host, Dave Lake. Tonight, we have in the studio Jared Hall. So what kind of music did you play when you were in Austin?
Oh, man. The group that I was on salary with was a guy named Hudson Moore, kind of pop country. He was a young kid, and he was shooting for the country music charts, trying to become the next Kenny Chesney. I played that music. I played piano and organ, pretty much locked into what he wanted. And then I played with a really awesome greasy group, Ramsey Midwood. Played a lot of that J.J. Cale kind of sound. It was really cool, real good vibey stuff. And Colin Gilmore, great songwriter, played a lot of that. And it was Americana, alt country, out of this world songwriting. We still play together when we can.
I came up with a new song. I wrote it in my head. The lines came dancing in my eyes as I lie awake in bed. There's people swinging in rhythm. They come from all around, and I should be jumping with them, but I can't even touch the ground, 'cause all my worlds are fleeting. All my worlds are fleeting. Everything I do or say, it touches the wind and it blows away. It's just the kind of day I've been breeding. I stood out on the hillside. I saw you down below. We met up in the middle like a fiddle and a bow. And some call it deception, some say it's just a joke. But every time I touch your hair, you disappear in the mirrors and smoke. And now all my worlds are fleeting. All my worlds are fleeting. I never knew how lucky I was till I left it all behind, because I could. If I could turn back time, I would. Now pictures can be taken and posted on the wall, even if the ground is shaking and the ladder starts to fall. I came up with a new song. This time I wrote it down, 'cause words have a way of changing when there's nothing but pictures all around. And all my worlds are fleeting. All my worlds are fleeting. All my worlds are fleeting.
Well, you had a gig out at the Tybee Post Theater with Colin Gilmore and the Velvet Caravan.
Yeah, so Colin wanted to come to town, and we had this crazy idea that he would come and do his songs, but Velvet Caravan, we'd arrange his songs our way, in a sense, or back him up as a gypsy jazz group. And we brought in our friend and guitarist Jackson Evans to help with that, and it was a great time. We did several shows, Savannah, Tybee, all the way up the coast to North Carolina. And that was a great experience. In fact, we're still hoping someday to put that on a recording somehow and do a Colin with the Velvet CD. So a lot of the groups I've been with, and including Velvet Caravan now, we love collaborating. We love working with other people and other styles and being influenced by whoever we can be influenced by.
Now, was there a particular song that night that sort of reflects that collaboration between the Velvet Caravan and Colin Gilmore?
I mean, we did a lot of his catalog, and we did a couple covers. Colin being from Lubbock, Texas, we did a couple Buddy Holly tunes.
What are some of the other songs that you're thinking of maybe for this new album?
Well, we have, obviously we talked about Waltz Noir that I wrote. There's a couple that Ricardo has written, and a new piece that Jesse has written. Gypsy Tonic is the name of it. The beauty of what we're thinking of for the new album is we have a core arrangement for the tunes, but we're thinking entirely out of the box. We're thinking how this could fit with a full orchestra. We actually have Ricardo is arranging right now for a couple of our tunes to be recorded by the Venezuelan Symphony, which is a pretty big deal. It's going to be pretty amazing. And we're looking at some brass sections. We're looking at bringing in some extra singers, maybe for a couple of pieces, add a little vocals. So, it's going to be all over the place. I think maybe we might resurrect one from the old album. We'll see and do a re-recording, but it's going to be entirely new things. Jimmy, who's out in San Francisco, one of our guitarists, has a couple pieces we're going to try to put on there. We're constantly writing. In fact, we're hoping to walk in the studio with about 24 tunes and pick 10 of them to put on the album.
You had a recent concert at the Trinity.
Yeah.
And that included some of the additional instrumentation that you might be thinking of.
Yeah, that was a nice experiment. We had Rebecca Flaherty in there. We had Stan Ray. Right now we're just kind of fishing around looking at how it might work with us with an added vocalist here and there. It turned out amazing. I really loved what we did with those two singers, and I know we're going to be working with some more singers, which I cannot divulge too much information yet, but down the road we have some ideas kind of in fruition right now. So,
is that just for performance, or is that maybe you're thinking of additional singers for the new album?
Oh, I definitely think maybe a couple for the new album. We're primarily an instrumental group, but we do have some ideas for a couple tunes, adding some singers, and not just in a way of just a lead singer, but in a way of even some tracks with some amazing choral kind of singing or some ethnic types of singing that we can add to the plate, just to add some amazing texture to some of the tunes. But it's always in the works. We do lots of shows. We have a show coming up where the band is working with Trey Gurley, one of our dear friends and a great vocalist here in Savannah, and he'll be singing with us for a private party that we're doing. So we definitely work with a lot of singers and want to add a little bit of an element of that to our next album.
Both at the Trinity, and my guess is possibly also with Trey, you're going to probably be moving more into their wheelhouse in terms of songs?
Well, a little bit. We work it out. One of the cool things, the Trinity show, we worked with Rebecca on a Romanian tune that we really wanted to do, and she was willing to learn it and did a great job delivering it. with Stan as well, we really wanted to do that Ben Tucker tune.
We're going to end it with a song written by the late, great Mr. Ben Tucker. This was first recorded back in 1961. Herbie Mann made it famous. Mel Torme made it famous. Velvet Caravan's going to make it even cooler. So don't be afraid to do that little Peggy Lee, that snap, the figure 8 animation. Oh, yeah. Coming home.
Would you like to play something? Are you inspired by anything right now?
I'm always inspired to play a little boogie woogie, so I'll give you some more of that here.
Despite the family connection, what inspires you about boogie woogie?
At some point, I got in touch with Jerry Lee Lewis a little bit in my musical listening, and that drove me to discover who influenced him, and kind of going down those rabbit holes of music and influence, and got me into listening to folks like Professor Longhair, Pinetop Perkins, and all those guys, which of course that gets you into learning about Dr. John, and that whole world really started to open up my eyes and see other things. The way that I've played a lot of my life, it always hasn't been just boogie woogie, being able to adapt to whatever situation. I've had to play for hours and hours of background music, so I can turn a melody, something like Amazing Grace, we can do this style. Into something else. It's new agey into some jazz and blues. And if you think about that perspective, I've been really into like George Winston as well, and I love George Winston's playing. I've met him and I've seen him in concert several times. So my inspiration is all over the map, so to speak. So kind of crazy. Yeah, exactly.
That speaks to Jared Hall, I know.
Yeah, exactly. There you go. There, I love it.
Would you like to play anything else?
Oh, sure. I could do something else. Let me see what I can come up with here for you. All right.
Well, we've had Jared Hall in the studio tonight, and this has just been a blast. I've known Jared for quite a while now, but I just love talking to you. So thank
Likewise,
you so very
Dave.
much for coming in.
Thank you so much. We'll talk very soon.
This has been another edition of Music Local and Sustainable, and I've been your host, Dave Lake. Save this time for another show next week.
Well, I know we ain't headed for the Hall of Fame. Gonna give it what we got, man, that ain't no shame. Let me know if you can hear me. Check, check, 1, 2. Let me know if you can hear me. Check, check, 1, 2.